everybody. I'm 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐬. 10 years ago, I invented a game called Tetris.
Great is not the word for Tetris. The right word for Tetris is perfect.
I'm at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. I stand in line, and there I play Tetris for the first time.
It's really the perfect game. Once you've played Tetris, like it's part of your DNA.
Then I go and play other games, and I find myself standing in line at the Tetris machine again, and I play again.
Perfectly implemented, perfectly balanced.
The fourth time I'm standing in this line, it's like, I'm really hooked on this game. I said, I'm going to go to the Soviet Union, and I'm not coming back till I have these rights. Tetris is for everybody, all genders, all ages.
The game transcends cultures, it transcends language, and there's a whole Tetris effect that happens. You start seeing Tetris pieces everywhere when you're packing a car or when you want to organize something.
Tetris, it's harmonically, everything comes together.
The thing that makes Tetris Tetris is the well and the pieces.
There's nothing associated with Tetris except geometry, which is universal.
It's no character, you don't have attitude to the pieces. They are all good. It allows you to concentrate on your activity.
It only is a game.
It's not a destructive game, it's a constructive game. You're basically building lines of blocks.
It's illusion, because what you generally do, you don't construct anything. As a matter of fact, you keep destroying the stuff you build.
I love that kind of attention.
All you see is the garbage, your failures and mistakes.
You want to keep clearing lines.
You play and play and play to get rid of it, to get it lowered.
It really kind of speaks to the human need to want to create order out of chaos. 𝐓𝐿𝐴 figured it out, and that's why we're around 40 years later.
All my life is connected to Tetris. Every time when I design a game, I never satisfied because I clearly see that this game won't be at the same level of Tetris.
The friendship that formed between Hank Rogers and 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐬 really, ultimately, brought Tetris to the rest of the world. They're still best friends today.
I think our friendship goes deeper than Tetris.
They're both programmers, and they both have the love of games.
Basically, I just live with it for my whole life, and time to time, strange stuff happened.
Play Tetris.
Play Tetris.
My friends.
Okay.
I was a regular schoolboy, and my mother was journalist in a cinema magazine, and when I got it, it was very fascinated. I fall in love with cinema that time. And my father was rather writer. He published several books on different writers and philosophers. So they was humanitarian, and I'm kind of more technical person. Father feed me with lots of logical puzzles. He tried to teach me with the chess, but completely failed because he was a very good chess player, and I never can beat him. So I'm very defensive in chess. So this is not good. There was some puzzles all the time around in the house. So that's what managed me to more mathematics in my career. In 8th grade, I entering to the special program for mathematics. Then I get to the high school, to Moscow Institute of Aviation, how it called, and I graduated as a programmer, mathematician, researcher. There is a professor in United States. His name is Coulomb. And he wrote the entire book about polyomino, how many different shapes you could build out of several squares, put them together. I love this book. It was translated, and one of my favorite books on my mathematical bookshelf. So 1 square produced just one piece, that's it. 2 square produced just one piece, which traditionally called domino. That's where mino came from. Trimino is just 2 pieces, the straight line and the ankle. Tetramino, we know it very well. But With the pentamino, it starts to be interesting because there are exactly 12 different shapes you could make together with the 5 squares. So this pentamino set, I purchased it, I believe I was 14 or 15, and it was very simple stuff, but it was lots of enjoyment there. It is very creative stuff. So basically it's all 12 shape which you could make out of 5 squares, W or C or X. This one called F somehow. It's not F, but look like F. Basically you could play with it. You want to build something. It's much more rich than jigsaw puzzle, because jigsaw puzzle you could put together just only one way. And this stuff are much more, give you much more diversity. Something like that. The activity very much remind you how you play Tetris, isn't it? I did some kind of tower or whatever. But then the moment starts that you get tired and try to put it back in the box. And that's where the puzzle starts. You feel that you're doing great and great, doing some progress, and all of a sudden you discover that you are very far from from the stuff to put it together. So we already don't have the piece for this item. Maybe here, that piece doesn't fit there as well. And then you start to kind of do some kind of panic movement, take away this stuff and put them together, and it didn't fit, and so on. 6 by 10 rectangle could be filled up. I calculated on my computer 14 million and some 300,000 something configuration. I don't remember exact number. And you could spend good half an hour before you finally got lucky and find the proper piece. I had several of them lying everywhere in my house. Once and twice a year I found this box and enjoy it and then put it back, and that's it. So, wow, I forget how to do this. So wasn't something really special and whatever for me. Got it. I was interested in computer and computer science. I did my diploma work and my kind of course for credit works in Computer Center of Academy of Science. And I love the people, and after I graduated, then I start working there. They placed me on some project about the speech recognition. I found myself that I'm working mostly on the tool, to make a tool to get some kind of strange business system, which is also the tool, you know. It's hard to explain you now, but we don't have too much fun stuff going out of computer. It was mostly boring kind of lines of code and maybe some kind of very primitive images which are composed out of letters and symbols. That's all we have that time. And I ask myself, and how do I get the pleasure directly from the screen of computer? As soon as I was done with my planned work on speech recognition, for myself I start put together some small riddles and games and whatever. So what you see here is you could have impression of the _𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬 60, which I originally created Tetris. Very old and unreliable. So I think it's just for guests to watch it and admire. This is not authentic computer. It's a little bit later computer. It's a version of so-called 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬 125. It looked very similarly to this one. It has this keyboard and kind of Russian placement of the keys. This is monitor. It just TV set, which produces kind of lines and ASCII symbol, and that's it. Usually I played with the numeric keyboard. 7, 8, 9 is 7, 9 for left and right, and 8 for rotation. I didn't have a hard drop was the space bar. Left, rotate, left, drop. Right, rotate, rotate, okay. And then escape when I lost. I still play with my box of pentamines, and I'm wondering why nobody just play against each other with this stuff. And I thought that it would be very interesting to try to research it on the computer. I just started programming it. At that time we didn't have any graphics on the computer, so I realized that I could use the square bracket for the squares, and it looked pretty very much. Then I start doubting, so 12 shapes is very good for when you have all of them in front of you on the table. But if they coming all the time, it's too much to remember. And 7 is a magical number. We know that 7 is the size of operative memory. People could remember lots of phone numbers. I decided that I should downsize it. So tetramine is obvious instead of pentamines, and I were very very glad and very excited when I make this decision. And I feel that it's natural the piece to fall down because it's a gravity on this planet. I immediately start to put together some play field. I didn't feel that I need the entire screen. Too much movement. This play field was filled up practically in 1 minute, so I need to somehow deal with it. I realized that the full lines, all full lines, are kind of dead on the screen. Why don't I just take them away? And that was the last and very serious aha for Tetris game. The game immediately start to be really bright. I can't stop playing. I really appreciate the hard drops I did in the game. The only one drop I could do is a hard drop because my keyboard, it doesn't distinguish push and release moments. With all my wish I can't do any soft drop at this time, but hard drop was very important, and that determined the rhythm of the game. Level of playing this game, as far as I remember.
What's the highest level on this? Is it 9?
9, but 9 is very kind of flashy. You have your eyes tired pretty soon. So.
Now, is level 9, is the reason you went up to 9 because you only wanted to use 1 digit space?
Yes. Finally, my colleague found out that I doing something strange on the computer for a week or so. And I say, okay, guys, okay, I will finish my programming and I will show you this stuff. And then I put a small title screen, record table, and put together and released the game. And it was like a wood fire. In 2 months, every electronic 𝐓𝐿 had this game on it. People say that my game is like a drinking vodka. The word glass was very kind of associated with the drinking, and we need it for vodka, of course. Then the people put the title 𝐓𝐿𝐿, which you used to drink vodka. But I insisted on Tetris all the time. And Tetris is very nice sound in Russian, at least. Tetramine is obvious object which we're dealing with in the game. So I decided it should be something kind of related to Tetris. It was a very popular game which lots of people enjoy on IBM PC called 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬. 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬, I like this X termination. But Tetris was too much copying from 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬, so I put is. I think Tetris will be little bit lighter and remind me of tennis, my favorite sport. And this is a good name. At some moment, people who work on IBM PC approached me and started pushing me to port it to PC. I didn't like very much PC that time. The colors were too funky, too bright, and kind of very unserious kind of stuff. I understand that this is enjoyment stuff for kids, but my mathematical kind of spirit, it's not something I really want to work on a lot, you know. And I had a perfect excuse. At that time, it was no common device between IBM PC and 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬 60. Floppy disks had totally different format, so that was my excuse. I say, I don't want to type it again, forget it. One day, one of my friends from this PC department brought me the young schoolboy. He was 15 or whatever. He get the school practice in computer center for programming. Absolutely genius guy. His name was Vadim Gerasimov. He used to work for Google last time I've heard about it. I don't know where he is now. But this young wunderkind kind of was presented to me, and I say, well, basically I have this floppy disk with Tetris program in it in Pascal language. So if you could transfer it somehow, then we could do something with it on PC. He knew MS-DOS, the PC operating system of the time, very well, so he could do absolutely magical stuff there. He understood the file system, which is totally different. He make a physical reading of the disk. And in 4 or 5 days, less than a week, he invited me and showed me my Tetris game, exactly with those square bracket and stuff, working on PC. I was really surprised and amazed with this. For me, it might take maybe months or something of work, of studying, of trying and whatever. He did everything in record time. It was absolute miracle for me. If we find a small rectangle of ASCII table of the certain color, and we decide to make this normal 16 color text mode. And because it's PC, it's much more international, so it's immediately spread, and we start to get the evaluation from abroad as well. So everybody likes the game, and we feel good. Our secretary of the director of the human resource person came to me and say, we got the telex from England. Come, take it and respond it. And that was a Robert Stein proposal to license Tetris. He saw this game in 𝐓𝐞𝐿. 𝐓𝐶 is a Hungary Institute of Computer Science, probably. And he likes it, and he wants to license it, and he proposed about, I don't remember, either 15, either 10,000 pounds or dollars. I don't remember clearly either. But that amount I appreciated in kind of 3-4 computers, PC. IBM PC that time. The situation was very clear. At this time, not my computer center, even Academy of Science has no right to have any business deal with somebody outside of USSR. It was like from kindergarten, every Soviet person knows that for sure. I had no doubt, and very serious and very simply answered him in a proper words that I am very glad to receive this telex. I like what you propose. I will find somebody who is authorized to make a deal with you. Later on, it shows that he considered my very polite reply on this as a authorization for him to get the license. That was absolutely shock for me later on. But that time I went with this telex to my deputy director, who was more authorized in the stuff. He said, okay, go ahead and find out if we could sell it and get couple computers in the computer center. That would be great. And then I start kind of my odyssey over those different agencies in Moscow.
I was born in the Netherlands. I lived in Holland for 11 years and moved to New York City. Learned English, went to Our Lady of Sorrows, graduated #1 in my school, and ended up going to the best math and science high school in New York called Stuyvesant High School. That's where I got to touch computers for the first time. These were the days of punch cards, and I would put in my punch card program today, and I would get the result, which is the printout, 2 days later. That was the turnaround time. That wasn't good enough for me, so I cheated, and I made 6 copies of my program and put one in each drawer of each class. So I had a turnaround time of 4 hours, and my teacher couldn't understand how I was so fast. The end of high school, I'm 18. I moved to Hawaii. Boy, I spent a year surfing and diving. You know, if there were waves, I'd be surfing. If there was no waves, I'd be diving. I was in the water every day. I was a fish. And one day I read in the newspapers, oh my goodness, I can go to night school and have access to computers. My dream. I loved computers. You know, I could ICS 301, you know, learn how to program in BASIC. So I said, Dad, I have access. And about a week into it, my teacher called me in and said, Mr. Rogers, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what are you doing? I says, well, you've already used as much computer time as an average student uses in a semester. And I showed him the programs I was working on, and he says, okay, carry on. You know, every assignment that we got, I went extra credit. I was so good that he hired me as a TA, and I graded all the papers for the next ICS 301 class. So I actually got a job, which was very useful. People ask me, what did you study? You know, what was your major? And I always say, I majored in computer science and I minored in Dungeons and Dragons. We had a organization at Campus Center called 𝐅𝐨𝐫𝐞𝐿, the Alternative Recreational Realities Group of Hawaii. You know, the first D&D books, they were like little tiny books, and they didn't really have enough information to actually play the game. You had to make up stuff. So we had all these additional rules, and we called them 𝐅𝐸𝐺 rules. And so that fleshed out for the dungeon masters and for the players how to play D&D. After, I don't know, I guess it was half a year, I ran out of computer classes that I could take in night school. And my teacher said, well, you know, if you want more computer time, you're going to have to go to day school. And so I said to my teacher, well, I'm not going to take any of my core requirements. And he says, I'm not saying that you have to take your core requirements. All I'm saying is that if you want more computer time, you're going to have to go to day school. I said, okay, I'll go. So I went to day school. I took all the computer classes I could take, and I took only the classes that I was interested in, which is pretty much all the science classes. I even took religion and the meaning of existence, you know, some history, stuff that I was interested in. At the end of 3 years, they called me in and they said, another Mr. Rogers story. Mr. Rogers, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you haven't taken any of your core requirements. And I said, well, I've already been to high school. And then they said, well, if you're not going to take your core requirements, you're not going to graduate. I said, there must be some mistake. I'm not here to graduate. I'm here to get an education. And I've already got my education. Thank you very much. And I chased the girl to Japan, and that was it. I went to Japan, and there was no way for me to access computers. And so I ended up working for my father in the gemstone business for 6 years. And then personal computers came out. And I go, oh my gosh, this is my chance. Got my whole hands on a computer. I went to Akihabara, which is the electronics center in Tokyo. What are people buying? You know, it have to do with computer, because I was ready to do an accounting software, for Christ's sakes. And I found out, wow, people are buying games. Games? And they were mostly like little tiny shooting games and jumping platform games. There were some simulation war games, you know, a little bit more complicated. But there were no role-playing games. And I thought, oh, yeah, I can do this. And, you know, at that time, in the US, we already had Ultima and Wizardry. What I didn't know was that in Japan, there was no Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my gosh, okay, I have to teach people how to, you know, play this game. I decided I'm going to make a game. I was going to have warriors and clerics and magic users, and I was going to have all these different character classes. You know, and my imagination, this game was going to be this big. What did I know about what a computer can do? I didn't, and I didn't know how to read, speak, or write Japanese. My wife could read, but she didn't understand anything about what was written in the manual, so that was kind of useless. And all the manuals were in Japanese, so I had to hack the computer the whole time. I had 64K, so I made a role-playing game within 64K, all graphics, no text, or a little bit of text. I started writing it all in BASIC, and then the 3D part. When I wrote the 3D in BASIC, it was like the walls were like, that's speed, and then you would take a step, bunk, and then it would like, I said, no, there's no way this game can take that long. And so I decided to take that part of the game and write it in assembler. When I was done with that, you push the button, it happened immediately. There was no, like, you couldn't tell that it was drawing anything. And I was like, that was the first time I really understood how fast assembler was, or conversely, how slow BASIC was. There's a sample monster here. This is the demon. 10K for all monster graphics, and 10K for all people graphics. I think they were about equal in weight. I based the graphics on, you know, on miniatures. Because when we played Dungeons and Dragons, we played them with miniatures. And so you had little people, and, you know, every time you went and you bought a new piece of armor, you would see it. And so you graphically could see your group up to 5 warriors getting better and better and better. And I made a dot matrix graphic editor so that I could draw each monster dot by dot. He's already bought armor, he's already bought a shield, he's already bought a sword. I mean, he's already an advanced level character. The only thing that wasn't graphic was potions. Potion, you could see whether you had a little bottle as a potion, but you couldn't tell how many potions you had in your bottle. You know, it's up to 5 potions. I wanted a package that was a little bit more expensive than the other packages. All the other packages were paper. Part of the reason is my game was 7,800 yen, when all the other games were 6,800 yen. And the reason for that is because I believed that my game had longer gameplay.
The painting in my office was painted by Roger Dean, known for doing things like the Yes Band logo. And this painting that's hanging in my office was the cover of an RPG game that Hank created called the Black Onyx. And this was the Famicom version of the game. The painting is called Freya's Castle. And Freya actually is Roger's daughter.
That game, it took me 9 months to build. And I would say that's my lifetime greatest achievement. I mean, when you think about it, like today, if somebody gave you 64K and say make a role-playing game, that would be tough. Now, I used to be in the gem business, so I knew all about how to. I told my dad I need, you know, 1,000 black onyx. The first 100 people that found the onyx and send me the secret password, which was Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life, I would send them a real black onyx. Black Onyx turned out to be the #1 game in Japan in 1984. I published it myself. My company was Bulletproof Software. And yeah, I was all of a sudden a folk hero in the computer game world in Japan. I wrote the first 2 games for the company, or for my company. Came to the conclusion that I couldn't do this for the rest of my life. Basically, writing a computer game is a full-time job. In fact, it's more than a full-time job. I was running the company and I was making computer games. And you can't do both. I had to choose. And so I started traveling around the world, looking for games to bring to Japan. Here we are at Earl's Court. This is the 1988 Personal Computer Show.
Hank, is that so far?
This is Shanghai on the Sega machine. It's pretty good. Thank you. Hey, Rob.
Yes, here we have Hank Rogers from BPS. Yes, he's over here breaking in and expanding the UK software market. He's expanding in many different ways, taking over the world.
I hired programmers to actually take those games and move them to the Japanese computers. I'd published 2 of the first 4 Electronic Arts games, Archon and Mule. They were amazing games, by the way. I published the Star Wars games. I made LucasArts. I made deals with companies all over the world. I was more nimble than the Japanese companies because generally the way it works in Japan is somebody sees a game, they bring it to Japan, and then they have all the buchos, all of the managers have to all agree, yes, this is a good game. And that takes too long. I'm the president of the company. I could make the decision. I spoke English. I had that advantage and I used it. I licensed a bunch of games. And one of the games that I licensed in that way was a little game called Tetris. Not only was my game the #1 selling game in Japan in 1984, but it was the #1 game in software rental. You could rent my game for 1 day, use your copy software, make a copy, bring it back, and then the next day somebody else could rent it. You can imagine how many people actually got to play my game. Way more than I sold. And so that was really going to kill our industry. And the magazines were advertising copy tools. Can you imagine? The answer to that, to copy, is Nintendo, because Nintendo was making cartridges. My wife actually read in a magazine that Mr. Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo, plays Go. Wow. And I'd had a submission from a Commodore 64 from England, 9x9 Go. Go is 19x19, but 9x9 Go. And this 9x9 Go was on the Commodore 64, which is a 6502. Nintendo is a 6502. So I knew that the algorithm was going to work. We didn't have to do anything to it. There's no danger of that. All we had to do was change the graphics and the sound and all of that, rebuild that from scratch. No problem. I wrote Mr. Yamauchi a fax. It's Tuesday. Mr. Yamauchi, my name is Hank Rogers. I can make a Go game for your Nintendo machine. I'm leaving for the States on Saturday. I would like to meet you before I leave. Wednesday, I get a fax back. Mr. Yamauchi will meet you tomorrow. I said, wow, that is some fast action there. Okay, so now it's Thursday. Yamauchi says, I can't give you any programmers. And I said, I don't need any programmers. I have programmers. I just need money. And he goes, how much money? And I'm, wow, that's fast. And so I thought of the biggest number I could think of, 30 million yen. And he goes, deal. It's like, whoa, that was fast. That was fast. And that was it. That was pretty much the meeting. I mean, it was over in no more than maybe between 5 and 10 minutes. We had made a deal for $300,000. That's like the biggest number that I've even ever heard of. Okay, fine. So I'm Cloud 9 and said, okay, I got to contact the guy from England and say, I make a deal with him because I actually didn't have a Go game. So I contacted Alan Scarf in England, who had made the game. I said, dude, I'll pay you this much. You got to come to Japan and help me move this game to the Nintendo machine. And Alan Scarf lived in my house for 9 months while we moved the game. Now, to get a computer to play Go is incredible. And now we're talking about a 64K, 8-bit computer playing Go. Are you serious? I mean, the fact that it can play Go at all is incredible. I have little ninjas jumping around collecting the stones. Instead of having a cursor, the stone floated above the board with a shadow, and if you said play there, then it would land on its shadow. It was graphically amazing. And it actually played pretty decently. It's 9 months later, and I'm back in a room with Mr. 𝐓𝐿𝐬, and Mr. 𝐓𝐿 is fumbling with the controller. I swear he'd never touched the controller before. I was like, are you serious? This is a Nintendo machine. You've never actually, I didn't say this, I'm just being flabbergasted at this whole scene. And he gets frustrated and he hands it over to his underling and he says, I want to go there, I want to go there, I want to go there. And he plays one game with it and he defeats me. He's a 6th degree black belt in Go. Like my father, who's also a 6th dan. I'm a 3rd degree black belt, so I can hold my own. If you give me 3 stones or you're 6th dan, we have an even game. He beats a 9x9 Go algorithm on Famicom. And he says, it's too weak for Nintendo. I said, Mr. 𝐓𝐿𝐬, it's a miracle that it plays Go at all. You know, it's plenty strong for children to learn how to play Go. And he says, did you not hear what I said? I said, it's too weak for Nintendo. I had to think fast. I said, Mr. 𝐓𝐿𝐬, it may be too weak for Nintendo, but it's strong enough for my company, BPS. Let me publish it. What about my money? I'll give you 100 yen for each copy until you get your money back, which is $1. So I would have had to sell 300,000 copies to give him his money back. And he said, deal. That is how I became a Nintendo publisher. Because if he says, yes, you can publish it, it means, yes, he's given me the blessing to be a publisher. So Go was my first game. And after that, you know, I had other reasons to meet with 𝐓𝐿𝐬. And so I would always make the appointment on a day when he had no other appointments after my meeting. And then we would play Go afterwards. And it was like the Prince and the Pauper, you know, because when we play Go, everybody else is gone. Normally he's got underlings that are making sure he doesn't say or do anything that he's not supposed to, whatever. But when you play Go, there's nobody in the room. First of all, nobody else in the industry played Go. Can you imagine? And those two worlds didn't collide at all. Go in Japan is not considered a game. They don't even say play Go. They say do Go. It's like doing kendo or aikido, and Go is in that class. And so we played Go, and then he would ask me questions about the business, what's going on, and so when we were actually the closest thing that he would have to being a friend with somebody. I'm at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. My job is to find games to bring to Japan. And the way it works is there are like hundreds of monitors from dozens of companies, all showing games. And the people are lined up to play those games, you know, for a couple of minutes to get an impression.
You know, he was trying to have a Go game. He was really into Go. He had this other game he was working on called Black Onyx. But everybody was playing this game in our booth. Tetris, Hank came over to play.
So I stand in line, and there I play Tetris for the first time. And, then I go and play other games, and I find myself standing in line at the Tetris machine again. And I play again. I said, oh, okay. And I go away, and I find the 4th time I'm standing in this line is like, I'm really hooked on this game.
And he sees my name on the top of the high score list. So he sits there for hours trying to knock me off the list.
I put the high score on the game. I beat Gilman Louis' high score on that game.
He meets up with Phil.
I showed it to Hank for the first time. Hank loved it.
Phil takes Hank into a meeting with me.
And so I started negotiating with Gilman about Tetris for Japan.
And Hank goes, I want to get the Japanese rights. At the CES, that's when we met with Stein, Robert Stein, who had the first version of Tetris that he said he saw while he was in Hungary, and was trying to see if there would be an American publisher of that particular game. Stein made his career finding interesting products in the Eastern Europe, right, and bringing them to the West. A sole practitioner of licensing people's products, identifying potential talent. I think that was an important function at that time, given the fact that it was really hard to go to a place like the Soviet Union. What was interesting was Robert Stein had shot this game to a few other publishers. One of them was to Brother Bun.
I thought we wouldn't have said this at the time because they didn't exist, but it was more of a handheld kind of game, a little bit of a lightweight game. I didn't feel like it had the heft to be a PC game. I also thought it looked a little messy. It was a story that I heard about where it came from and through whom, but I was dealing with people several steps down the ladder, and I wasn't totally sure of its provenance.
There was a producer at that time, Brad Frager. It's kind of a contract producer. And Brad was saying, hey, I just saw this great game called Tetris that Robert Stein is showing around. You should really, really publish it. Then I got a call from Microsoft, from Jim McConaughey. Jim goes, hey, Stein is coming to the States. He dropped off this game. We can't stop playing it. Like, we cannot stop playing it.
Jim McConaughey, who was the CEO for Microsoft, said, I've got something to show you. And he showed me Tetris. I played it for a little bit, just couldn't quit playing it. Jim says, hey, I'm dealing with Robert Stein. He has the rights to it.
Phil was in the meeting, myself was in the meeting, and Stein was in the meeting. I said, I like the game a lot, but I want to make a lot of changes. Right? I want to change the graphics. I want to change the scoring mechanisms, the controls. I want to tweak with it. Can I talk to the programmers? And he goes, you can't talk to the programmers. I go, I can't talk to the programmers. Why can't I talk to the programmers? If you're licensing somebody's product, I need to be able to talk to the programmers. And he goes, well, the programmers are not in Hungary. They're in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union? I turned to Phil. I said, put it in a red box.
We wanted to push it as the first product out of Russia, and we came up with a marketing concept, and the St. Bastille is the box, and the spelling of Tetris using the Russian symbol and letters.
So his marketing brain starts rolling. My marketing brain starts rolling. So we do the deal.
We signed the deal, but unbeknownst to us, is it was signed in with Academy Soft, and eventually 𝐓𝐿 took it over in Russia, and that's how some of the rights got convoluted later.
We spent months trying to get that thing tuned so that it felt right through that progression till you got into that sweet spot of the gameplay, because that was a key part of the magic of the game, right? We even put a thing called the boss key, because people were playing this thing at work. So we had so that if you press a key, a spreadsheet, a fake 𝐓𝐿 sheet would show up, because people, once you started playing, they couldn't stop playing. We had to get people to pick up the game. So we had to tell a story. We really try to play up this kind of glasnost environment. Hey, this is the game that Russia will use to invade America, right? Through addiction. We were trying to put together a story that would get people sucked into the game. But once you got into the game took care of the rest. And yeah, we tweaked it, we tuned it, but the core of the game was always there. It was there way before we touched the product. And I give all the credit to the original Russian team.
We finally got the PC version from Spectrum Holobyte. And when we put it on PC and saw it, we got, both of us, me and Belikov, we became pale.
There's a 16-year-old German pilot that landed a plane in Red Square, and we put that into the introduction.
Pulling a banner that says play Tetris, right across the screen.
That was very big political scandal at this time around this landing and whatever.
So we thought that was fun because, again, we're trying to get the game positioned so that when they think about the Soviet Union, they'll think about Tetris. When they think about Tetris, they'll think about the Soviet Union. Stein goes, you need to change that.
We immediately kind of contact them and say it's absolutely unacceptable.
So we pulled it out.
And they say, no problem, we will take it away. That was a very big relief.
Just so happened, as we were coding up the game, the announcement goes off that it's going to be the first summit, détente, between Reagan and Gorbachev. So that all was part of how we framed it. Like, this is the thing that's going to break through the Iron Curtain.
We hired a Gorbachev and a Reagan look-alike.
And we start producing ads, a USA Today style ad that says, you know, what's really happening behind these secret meetings, you know, and they had them two playing Tetris. And it was picked up by everybody.
We really went all out, TV, media, the whole perestroika.
So Tetris was actually launched with the story from the New York Times as the first game from the Soviet Union.
And it won Game of the Year at the SBA Awards for 1988.
The situation was very clear. Not my computer center, even Academy of Science has no right to have any business deal with somebody outside of USSR. It was very special agency of Ministry of Foreign Affairs who was authorized to sign some kind of business deals with any other outside entities. And then I start kind of my odyssey over those different agencies in Moscow. I didn't want this too much. I was a little bit afraid of all this kind of activity around this stuff. So any excuse to avoid it, I used in full force. But as soon as I have this telex, I need to do something with it. And I did several agencies, and all of them kind of say, no, we don't deal with software, we don't know how to do this. It's not our main job, and the deal is too small or whatever. Finally, I got very good guy in 𝐓𝐿. His last name was 𝐓𝐿𝐿. Sasha 𝐓𝐿𝐿, Alexander 𝐓𝐿𝐿, yeah. He likes programming and he likes us programmers, and that was a very big hope for my little game. So I prepare some kind of paper for agreement between Computer Center and 𝐓𝐿. My deputy director just signed it without reading. 3 or 4 months, I didn't heard anything of it. And all of a sudden he called me and say, yeah, well, I met Robert Stein. He considered your reply as an agreement. I say, come on, how could it be? It looks like he get this deal as is, and he is sub-licensed it already, and the game is about to come out. We can't do anything like that. So the only thing we could do is just to sign the agreement with them and let them do it. So we don't have we cannot bargain with him already because he consider this telex reply as a general agreement. That was it. Somehow it happens and stopped. And I never heard about the game, about anything for another kind of maybe 3 or 4 months. But at this time, the new person came to the scene, Mr. Belikov, Nikolai Evgenievich Belikov came on board. He became the chief of my previous friend. We discussed the strategy, we discussed what we could do. We decided we never give up the other platforms and whatever. So we was all in agreement about this stuff.
I went to Japan.
It's June by now. 𝐏𝐒𝐿 comes to Japan. His first stop is the company that put him in business, a Japanese company called 𝐓𝐿, that made a deal to represent Microsoft in Japan.
I had a good relationship with Microsoft Japan through 𝐓𝐿 Corporation, because they kind of gave me my start, giving me contracts to develop games for the MSX back then. It was a Japanese computer.
That was their relationship. So he had to stop at 𝐓𝐿 first. And they were the biggest company in Japan at that time.
I showed it to them, but they were not that interested in Tetris.
𝐓𝐿 passed on Tetris in 1988 because they said Tetris was too retro. Can you imagine? Tetris was too retro in 1988. 𝐓𝐿 is gone, Tetris is still here. I would say ASCII is too retro.
So Hank goes, I'll license it. I agree that Hank would be the right partner because Hank loved this product. Like, he loved this product. And I knew he was going to do right by this product. Hank wanted console rights as well. Now, this is pre-Game Boy.
Gilman, at that point, licensed me. Of course, it was PC, it was console, it was coin-op, and then he goes back, and we had made a whole deal.
So I go back and I call up Microsoft because we jointly owned the IP. The Mirror Group was owned by the Maxwells, and the son of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was the head of the entire enterprise. But Kevin was trying to build his own sub-publishing group inside this, an electronic publishing group. The CEO was a guy by the name of Peter Bellata. And Peter wanted the rights for Blasteroids. He traded Blasteroid rights for Tetris.
3 weeks later, he calls me and he says, I'm really sorry to say this, but while I was in Japan dealing this, Microsoft has licensed those rights to Tengen, Atari Games / Tengen. I said, those guys absolutely have no presence in Japan. Why would they do that? They traded it for Blasteroids.
Blasteroids was a B game at best.
I mean, Blasteroid sounds like a condition. Blasteroid, here, take some preparation B. You know, where did nobody ever heard of Blasteroids after that? Anyway,
I was furious, but he wanted the Atari brand. So I go up to Kevin. I said, "This is Kevin Maxwell. I said, this is the worst decision you could ever make. How could you let this game go for a B-class game like Blasteroids?" Kevin was trying to broker the peace between warring American company run by myself, Sphere and Spectrum Holobyte, and Peter Bellata, who was running Microsoft at the time. So the way it worked was, okay, you keep the game rights, but Peter is going to license this off. So I call up Hank and I said to Hank, look, I'm out of it.
I said, Gilman, you know, we made a deal. You can't just like walk away and say that, sorry, there was no deal. We have a deal. He said, okay, let me see what I can do. And then what he came back with is, okay, well, I got you the PC rights, you know, the personal computer rights. And that's something.
My parent company has ruled that they're going to go with the Brits. The Brits have licensing it to Atari or Tengen, right? You need to go talk to them if you want to get the rights for the cartridge rights.
I'd already started developing on all 8 different personal computers. They were all not compatible. And on Nintendo, on the family computer or the NES. Tengen, okay, Tengen. I know the guy who I can deal with at Tengen. His name is Randy Brolite. He sends me a fax and he says, sorry, but we've made a decision. We can't license it to you. I'm like, what? And Atari Games was owned, let's see, it was 46% by an American company, 46% by Namco, and 8% by the people running the company. So I thought, well, maybe Namco decided that they're going to publish it. But Namco had a policy. They never published anybody else's software. They only ever published their own games. I remember being at a trade show, and I ran into Iwatani. Iwatani is the creator of Pac-Man. And so I go, Mr. Iwatani, what do you think of Tetris? And he drew a blank. He said, what do you mean? I said, never mind. If Namco was going to be publishing Tetris, and if they were looking at it, he would know. And so the fact that he didn't know meant that Namco had no eyes on Tetris. I said to my team, look, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to there in San Jose. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm not coming back till I have these rights. I got a meeting. Remember the table with Van Elderen, Nakajima, Randy Brolite, and I was explaining that I had already made a lot of progress on Tetris, and it took me 10 days. You know, I remember having sushi with the president of Atari Games, Nakajima, and on a napkin we made a deal. That's how I end up being able to publish Tetris in Japan. So I thought.
We've invited everybody in here today for the grand showing of the original Tetris as Alexei programmed it. The machine is an electronic 60. And Alex came up with the idea to program Tetris, and he thought about it for 10 days and programmed it for about 4 days. And this is the result of his effort. So Alexei,
I'm still on level 5, and I could increase the speed on the fly.
oh really?
Yes.
I did that by accident the other day. How does that work?
Yeah, you just push the 4 button, and now here we go. We are on the level 6.
Oh, I see. It's a one-way thing. Ah,
Exactly.
see?
My scoring system was a little bit complicated.
I had invented some new additions to Tetris.
One contribution that Hank made that most people don't know about was the single, double, triple Tetris. The idea of clearing 4 lines at a time, and that gives you the highest score. Like that was Hank.
In the original rules of Tetris, there is no points awarded for clearing a line. The only points that you get in the original Tetris is for allowing a new piece to appear in the playfield. And the way the scoring works is you get 24 points for allowing a piece to appear in the playfield. Every time it falls one row, then you lose 1 point. So the quicker you hard drop it into its final position, the more points you save. And Alexei charges you a 5-point tax for peeking at the next piece. So instead of getting 24 points, you only get 19 points if the next piece is showing.
No можно так. Now you see the next piece is shown just in the middle of the screen. I mean, of height wise.
Do you like that idea though?
Rewarding the player? Yeah, actually it's more natural. That's what people expect. You know, when I wrote the game, I think just about my own common sense. But if you do the game for people to play, you need to respond what they expect out of the game, right? And it's quite natural to get extra credit for cleaning lines and other stuff. So basically, it's much better idea.
I used to play Tetris in arcade. That was Sega arcade. And before I joined the Sega, I was a teenager. And, the Japanese Game Center, that was a very exciting place. 2 people sat facing each other in a table-type cabinet. And it was, coins stacked on the table like that. And I wasn't a good player, but I watched the super plays, by the great players, many great players in Japan. And there was always a huge crowd around the Tetris table. Tetris was like very intellectual battle type of game, It's very quiet and silence, and very high tension, and everybody watching just blocks. I think Tetris is the first game, it's very great to watch. Yeah, Tetris is very minimal, simple game. No decoration, just, very simple patterns of shapes. Everybody go into a deep dive into the zone states kind of feel. I love that. I love that feeling.
So I send my guys out to get initial orders for Tetris. And they came back and said, we got 40,000 units. And 40,000 is not enough. Because in order for you to get a repeat order, you have to sell through at least 200,000 copies. And so I made a meeting with you, Mr. Yamauchi, again. So, Mr. Yamauchi, I think I have one of the greatest games in the history of computer games. And my guy, I don't know whether it's my marketing that sucks or whether my sales guys suck. I don't know. But we've only been able to get 40,000 units. Well, he calls in Miyamoto. Miyamoto's the guy who made Mario and Zelda and everything. Called him Miyamoto. Miyamoto, is this a great game? And Miyamoto says, yes. And it's, wow. So, and how do you know? It says, because your secretaries and accountants are playing at lunch and after work. And then he calls in Imanishi. He's the number 2. He goes, Imanishi, I want you to put Nintendo's seal of approval on this game. I was like, whoa, that's like the seal of good housekeeping. And I want you to call every distributor and tell them to order more. I was like, wow, this is some serious action that's going on here. I remember there was a moment when Yamauchi actually thought, you know, he could buy Tetris from me and then let Nintendo publish it. And he said, you'll make much more money if you let me publish Tetris and I'll pay you royalties. And I said, that may be true, but Tetris is my game. The only way that I would give you Tetris is if you would give me Mario. Okay, you got the point. So thank you very much. Go back to Yokohama. Mr. Imanishi calls me back the next day and says, please, please, please don't make me put the seal of approval on the game, because if I do, then every other company is going to want a seal of approval, and then I have to set up a whole department figuring out which games have, you know, get the seal of approval or not, and then it's just going to be a huge headache. So, but I'll call every distributor for you and make them order more. Okay, I thought, well, shoot, you know, as long as I get the orders, I'm fine. So he calls distributors, and we got another 30,000, which is like, oh, come on, you know? So Christmas comes, the distribution has puts our games in all the stores, and it's not selling through. Nobody knows what Tetris is. You know, it's not a game that you can look at an ad and say, oh, I want to play that game. No, you have to play Tetris. And so distributors then, the stores started panicking, the distributors started dumping. Dumping means selling below their cost. I got my guys calling everybody, said, do not dump your software. This is a different pattern from every other game. People have to play the game before they can want to, it'll take off, but it takes off slower. Well, end of January, every place was sold out and every place was clamoring for more. Beginning of February, we got orders for 200,000 units. Where am I going to get the money for 200,000 units? Because at that time, the way that it worked is you had to pay Nintendo cash up front. Then basically they go into manufacturing. 2 months later, you get your delivery, it goes into the store. Then you get paid back. So it's 2.5 months before you get your money back. $2.5 million, $2 million, $10 or 1,000 yen a cartridge. And so I went to the bank, and the bank says, where's your collateral for $2 million? And finally, I convinced my wife to convince her family, her father. Basically, they put up all of their real estate, all of it. And so we managed to hang on. Game Boy was coming. I knew Game Boy was coming out. We'd heard this long before in 88. And so I got on a plane in January, and I went to Nintendo of America and met with Mr. Arakawa. And I said, Mr. Arakawa, what's your plan for Game Boy? I know you always have a policy to include a game with a new hardware. So what's your plan? And he said, well, I'm going to include Mario. And I said, well, I got a better game. It's Tetris. And he already knew about Tetris because people were playing it. I said, if you want little boys to buy your Game Boy, include Mario. If you want everyone to buy your Game Boy, include Tetris. And then you could always, afterwards still sell Mario and make the money off Mario. So he called in, I think it was Ken Lobb. He called in his experts, and they all said, yeah, do that.
Hats off to Mr. A and the rest of the team and Nintendo, recognizing that this was transformative and a critical product to pack in, because it was the perfect product to launch it with.
We made a deal. I shook hands on that. I didn't have the rights. I said, I'm going to go to the Soviet Union and get those rights.
Run away from San Francisco to Seattle. Here we is the new Nintendo, one of the new buildings. I think they have 2 new buildings. Okay, the first building you see should be the building where they manufacture, the Nintendo unit. Well, we have an appointment with Mr. Arakawa in 5 minutes, so actually we're a little bit early. Let me introduce you to Mr. Ota. This is Mr. Ota from Nintendo of America. He's probably the most important Japanese person in America next to Mr. Arakawa.
That's not true.
So, this is a sample of the way Nintendo merchandises products. This is Nintendo of America's customer support section. The first 2 rows down there answer letters and write stories for the magazines. Panning over here, we see people answering the phones, answering questions about the Nintendo machines. How many of them are there?
There are, probably right around 150 to 200 people. We're open from 4 a.m. until 10 p.m. So
4 a.m. till 10 p.m.? Oh my gosh. Okay, and scanning around here, we get into the games counselors. How many game counselors are there?
Right around 82, and the numbers are growing.
82, and these are people who answer questions about games and
how to play games.
Okay, so altogether on from that section down to here is all customer support.
All the way down here is all customer support.
Well, maybe in a couple of years this will be BPS.
Robert Stein, he was the closest to Moscow, and we were communicating by fax for the handheld rights. You know, he kept on putting me off, and you know, he sends me a fax. He says, I'm going to go to this whatever trade show in Germany, then I'm going to Moscow, I'll be there for a week, there for a week, then I want you to come. Why? You know, why do I have to come a week after you go to Moscow? What's going on? That was February of 1989. Then at that time, I got a call from Arakawa. I said, somebody, and that was Gilman Louis, had come to me and said that they could give me the Game Boy rights to Tetris. All the alarms were going off. There is, somebody else is dealing Tetris somewhere. I got to get on that plane. So I said, Mr. Arakawa, Gilman is the one who came to Japan and said he could give me the rights, and turned out he didn't have the rights. So I'm about to get on a plane and go to Moscow and get these rights for you. Give me a chance to finish my job. He said, okay. With a tourist visa, 2 days later, I got on a plane, went to Moscow. I get on a plane with a tourist visa, not knowing anybody or anything.
There she is. The St. Basil.
I had a video camera because I had no confidence that I would be able to describe what happened to me in Moscow. And so I was recording everything.
Okay, this is the hotel from the outside, the Interest Hotel. Actually, it looks wonderful from the outside. This is my room in the Interest Hotel. Oh, look, there's even a mirror. There's a TV. This TV, I tried to plug it in last night, and sparks started coming out of the machine. This is Moscow. It looks pretty gray. That's because it's pretty gray. Well, today I'm going to go out, see what I can find out.
All I have is the game with the copyright notice, and the copyright notice says Tengen to Mirasoft, from Mirasoft to Andromeda, from Andromeda to 𝐓𝐿. I had a bitch of a time finding 𝐓𝐿.
I've spent about 3 hours trying to locate 𝐓𝐿. Watching video of Hawaii Because the TV doesn't work, the radio doesn't work. I've read everything I could read. I'm waiting for phone call from Japan. They're gonna tell me where the Moscow Book Club is, because I'm sure I won't be able to find out by asking people here.
My strategy was I was going to find a Go player in the Soviet Union. So I had gotten the address of the Russian Go Association. They made some phone calls for me, set up a Go game. And so the next morning I had a chance to play Go with the third strongest Go player in the Soviet Union. He was also a 6th dan, just like Mr. Yamauchi. And like my father, he was also a 6th dan.
I got smart this time, and I have hired a car.
The next day, we hired a limousine.
Driver in the mirror. I wonder if we can. Maybe it's too dark to see. So, what's your name?
Как зовут?
My name is Victor.
Victor.
Victor. I see. Okay.
I get back to my hotel, and in the hallway of the hotel, all of a sudden I see an interpreter. And it's like, interpreter. It's like, oh my gosh, of course, I should hire an interpreter.
You know, to the left, oh, you can't see us. It's there is one of the biggest swimming pools in Moscow.
But it's not a swimming pool now, I'll bet. It's a skating rink or something?
No, it's swimming pool. It's open all the year round.
And people swim there now?
Yes.
Wow. So I have a very lovely interpreter. And her name is...
My name is Allah.
Your name is Allah.
And so I said to Allah, can you help me find 𝐓𝐿? And she looked at it and said, oh yeah, I know where 𝐓𝐿 is. She knew that right away. And I said, that made me suspicious. It's like she already knew what I was looking for. In other words, the word had gotten around, this guy snooping around for 𝐓𝐿, which I'm not supposed to be doing that. I'm not supposed to be meeting any Russians. I'm only supposed to be there taking pictures of tourist attractions. That's it.
Really something.
First, we went to the Go Club. The place where people play Go is inside of this big building where the Olympic Committee was.
Whoa! What's this? Olympiada? Olympisk. It's where they have the chess club. They take their sports very seriously. We're going right into it. I'm impressed. I am impressed.
I won that game. Problem with the Go player is he didn't speak a word of English. So he was absolutely useless. I couldn't get anything out of him, but I had the interpreters, it's fine. So then we went to 𝐓𝐿.
Okay, we're on the street here, where we just passed by the American Embassy. And that building there is 𝐓𝐿.
And I remember going up to the door of 𝐓𝐿, this interpreter, she goes, no, you can't go in there. And I said, what do you mean I can't go in? I said, you're here on a tourist visa. It's like, how do you even know that, you know? And I said, I didn't come all this way to stand in front of a door and then go back to Japan and get a visa so that I can go through this door. I'm going through this door. Are you coming with me? And she said, no, I can't go with you. I said, okay, I'm going in. You wait here. So I just stood there in the lobby waiting for somebody to talk to me. Mr. 𝐓𝐿 comes down the stairs and I had my game. I said, I'm the publisher of this game in Japan, Tetris, and I'm looking for the rights to Tetris for handheld. And he looks at it and he looks at it and he says, what machine is this for? And I said, it's for Nintendo. It's a console. And he says, we never licensed Tetris for console to anyone. I'm like, holy crap. If somebody else picked up those rights, they could stop me from publishing and my in-laws would lose all of their land. So I was in some seriously deep kimchi at that moment. I decided, you know what? I'm going to focus on the mission that I'm here and I'll deal with this later. So I said, I would like to come back tomorrow and I'm here for the handheld rights. The reason I said the next day is because I wanted to make sure that they could get the right people in the room. So he said, okay, come back tomorrow. I'll meet you at 1 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. that was my official invitation right there. Next day I went back, I get escorted into this room. On one end of the long table, there are 8 people, something like that, sitting on the other side. I'm sitting by myself on this side, and we're about to start the 3rd degree. And all these guys are suspicious, like, who the hell are you? You know, how did you know, because I came out of nowhere, I wasn't supposed to be there.
You looked really suspicious. From Japan, with perfect English. I mean, something really wrong.
Yeah, so I'm a Dutchman living in Japan who talks like an American. And by the way, my English is very simple English because I've been living in Japan for many years and I know how to speak English as a second language. So all these people are able to understand me. Anyway, there's like a lot of negative vibes coming from the other side of the table. And I could see his demeanor change as the conversation went on, when he realized that I was a game designer. As I was explaining what my involvement was, I could see him visibly warm up. And I mean, the others, a couple of guys in there, I don't know, they're KGB or whatever they, you know.
Well, they are all, frankly, KGB, but they are not kind of field agents, so per se. Mostly they sell weapons, I believe, to the other country. They have specialty in making contracts and follow the money. And
I can tell you this, nobody on the other side of the table, except 𝐓𝐿𝐸, knew anything about computer games.
Oh, about computer games, no, but about the international trade, they probably...
They knew something. Well, if they did, they got totally spanked by Stein in that contract.
I don't think Robert Stein, he intended to misrepresent anything. You know, he was like a sole entrepreneur who's out there trying to make a buck by licensing products.
Stein shows up, which I knew he was going to be there. I just didn't know where or how. But what I didn't know was Kevin Maxwell also showed up.
They never meet each other. But Kevin Maxwell, Stein, and 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬 was at the same time in 𝐴𝐿𝐸. So I met them all.
So now there were 3 people in Moscow at the same time trying to get the Game Boy rights.
We were supposed to have all rights, not just PC and Mac, but it kind of came out that I'm not sure Stein had all the rights that he needed with this 𝐴𝐿𝐸 programmer.
We found out that Stein started selling the other platform, which we never considered him to have. We were furious when we heard about this.
The deal that had been made was between 𝐴𝐿𝐸 and Robert Stein, which is Andromeda, for the computer. By the time this deal gets to Microsoft, they read the contract that says, the computer. Oh, that's everything. We got everything.
Up until that point, I thought we had all the rights, right? Because Stein represented that as such.
Stein had licensed arcade rights to Tengen, because they were an arcade company, and to Sega. And he didn't have those rights. And so the Russians say, yeah, you need to clean that up before we even talk to you about anything else.
He came and started crying and saying that he can't afford anything without this platform and that. We say, no, we don't want to even discuss it with you.
They came to me and they say, Stein is here. He's looking to figure out the arcade rights. What should we do? Rather than asking for a per unit or something complicated that you can't check, ask him for a big upfront money. And so that is the deal that actually ended up happening between Stein. That's how Tengen and Sega got the arcade rights.
I don't think Stein was being evil. I just don't think the communications, the faxing back and forth, the definition of what a computer and a console, all that was kind of blurred at that particular time. Maybe he overrepresented what he had, but he wasn't a lawyer. You know, he wasn't a contracts guy. He was trying to do his best to do one of his short deals, but, you know, he didn't have a big name Silicon Valley law firm behind him.
Stein wasn't publisher, he was an agent. All he's do is sub-license.
So Robert Stein came to Moscow and said, look, we're publishing this. You can either cooperate or you can try and sue Microsoft or whatever. And that's, of course, an impossible thing. There's no way that the Russian government is going to sue somebody outside the Soviet Union over intellectual property.
All this is brewing in one big stew. You had the Soviets and the Russians. You had the murkiness of the contract and the technical meanings of what was licensed and what wasn't licensed. You had 𝐏𝐿 in Russia. You had Microsoft through Robert Maxwell, who was bigger than life character, kind of the Rupert Murdoch competitor of his era, who had strong relationships with the Kremlin. So he was trying to call in over the top, right, by engaging very senior levels of government to force the license to fall in favor of Atari and Microsoft.
Nobody on the other side of the table had any idea how big the game business was. They were taking the Russians to the cleaners. They were getting a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. Just imagine this. Spectrum Holobyte has a quarter where they sell $100,000 worth and they pay $20,000 to Microsoft. That becomes income on the second quarter, $20,000. And from that $20,000, they pay Stein 20%, which is $4,000 in the next quarter. And then Stein reports that in the fourth quarter. So by the time the fourth quarter comes around, it's 20% of $4,000 at $800, out of this huge chain of money. So I said, look, the way I'm going to do this deal is you guys should not care how many sub-licensees. You are going to get a fixed amount of money from each unit that is sold. So I will pay you 25 cents per unit for Game Boy. No matter who sells it in the world, you will get 25 cents.
My dad was an honest guy. He could really say, I'm not the richest guy, but I will show you exactly how much money I'm making. Here's an honest deal. Whereas before, they weren't getting an honest deal, obviously.
They asked me, so how many copies do you think you're going to sell? And I was thinking, if we're talking about packing it in with Game Boy, maybe 30 million copies.
No, come on, you was very moderate with your expectations.
Okay,
10
all right.
million, maybe 5 million, 10 million.
Oh, okay, say it's 10 million. 10 million times a quarter, that's $2.5 million. That is significantly more than they were ever going to make with all the deals that they had done up to the...
Totally other area, of revenue.
They asked me, when are you coming back to Moscow? And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we need time to think this over. And I said, I either leave Moscow with the rights to handheld Tetris, or I don't. I leave without it. I'm not coming back. We don't have that kind of time. I made this very official thing, boom, and this, you have 1 week to answer me with...
Letter of intent or something.
Yeah, with a proposal, and after that, this offer is null and void. Good morning. It looks like it's snowing. I was at Mr. Pachinov's house yesterday until 2 o'clock in the morning. Had a very interesting conversation about game design, and he showed me many new games. I'm sure we can have very fruitful relationships. I'm on my way now to 10 o'clock appointment with 𝐏𝐿 about obtaining the rights to handheld Tetris. We shall see. In that meeting, we hammered out the basics of what a deal would look like. And I said, I'll get you a contract. It took 8 hours to make a phone call out of the Soviet Union to anywhere. I make the phone call to my lawyer in Tokyo. I do it before I go to sleep so that if they call me during the night, then I'll be there. And I wake up in the morning, sure enough, it takes about 8 hours. I said, okay, I need a contract. I have to explain every word, so it can't have any big words. It can't be more than 20 pages because I have a limited amount of time to explain this. It has to be a fair contract because I'm not going to have time to go back and forth. This contract has to work the very first time. And it has to satisfy Nintendo that we actually have the rights to Tetris. And you have 24 hours to create this contract, and here's the fax number. So 24 hours later, this contract appears. To them, they'd never seen a contract that was that fair.
Hank is very good partner. We decide that we want him.
And by the way, since then I found out they used that contract as the basis for all their contracts after that.
Including myself, I use this contract a lot.
So yeah, we signed a contract.
For handheld?
For handheld, on Friday. Then they asked me, would you like to do another contract for console? And I said, sorry, but I can't. The company I licensed from, they're a big litigious company. I had read the Atari contract, and my lawyer said that there's a clause in there that says if we don't have the right, you have to help us get it. How the hell did that get into the contract? It's like, oh my God, this is litigation. I have to go back and figure out whether I can do this or not. After the meeting, Alexei came to me and he asked me to meet that evening. Did everybody know that?
No.
At your hotel at 6 o'clock or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Meet me at the front door, because I can't go into your hotel, being a Soviet citizen, unaccompanied. It felt a little clandestine, you know?
You want to show me something important.
I had brought with me a Sharp Famicom, and I had a little portable videotape player, tiny videotape, and it had a screen that had a RCA in. I wanted to show him Tetris on Nintendo. He'd never seen it.
Yeah. I tried to play. I was completely disappointed because it was a wrong hand. I play with my right hand and drop with my left hand, but with the joypad.
Yeah, joypad.
Yeah, it was different kind of disappointment, which I politely hide. but anyway. And probably the same day, maybe next day, we went to my apartment because I was desperate to show him my other games. He was the first professional game designer I ever see in my life. So basically, it was important to at least hear his opinion. Maybe he would be interested in publishing something or whatever, but what is important, I don't know. I am out of this world. So that's why I take some kind of risk to inviting him.
Saturday and Sunday, basically, we had no meetings. You took me on a tour.
Today is a wonderful day. We have done most of our business. Today we are sightseeing with Mr. Pajitnov.
This building like a false teeth.
We are just about arriving at the Red Square.
Yes.
Or I should say the Kremlin. It's supposed to be 9 churches in one. This is Mr. Alexei Pajitnov. He is the author of Tetris.
Play Tetris.
Play Tetris.
My friends.
Okay. That's it. Bye-bye.
So, you have to see my bar. I'm Russian people.
Beard. Beard.
Barbe is in French.
I see. This is 𝐓𝐴 Street. There's a lot of free activity going on here, like music and poetry being read and art being shown. Here's the artist, and she's.
Oh.
Just bought a very nice little book from Arbat at 𝐓𝐴 Street.
And the next day he invite me to Japanese restaurant. I had no idea what Japanese people eat, and then I found out that I put in situation when I need to use wooden stick instead of forks, and moreover I need to eat the fresh uncooked fish, which kind of absolutely unthinkable thing for Russians. Fish is something for sanitary reason, you need to cook, overcook, and overcook again, you know. But he kind of showed me how to handle those chopsticks, and then he showed me that this this green stuff is really hot kind of spice,
wasabi,
which could help me to swallow this uncooked fish and whatever. So basically, I managed to be okay.
You managed to be okay.
Yeah.
Guess what his favorite food is now? Sushi. You know, a little taste of Japan.
And strange restaurant, very fancy, but they don't manage to cook the fish, the most cookable kind of food out of anything else, you know.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
That was another quite an experience for me, yeah. Besides Nintendo machine, which is upside down device. Japan is another planet, with another lifestyle, with another human behavior, weather, buildings, everything. You are really on the other planet there. Entire visit in Kyoto was kind of important for me. The second day, it was a short visit with Mr. Yamauchi. He was a normal kind of serious businessman, very polite, very kind and we did have a good conversation. He started with apologizing that was a small kind of bug in the Game Boy Tetris, something with the probability of the pieces. We discussed how we fix it and decide to fix it, and then he gifted me with the electronic organizer. Absolutely stupid device of this time, but it was very fashionable. Complicated calculator with the small screen which you could put schedule, and it's something which died maybe 4 months after that. but I still keep this this strange device somewhere in my closet. It was about maybe 30, maybe 40 minutes, kind of. And everybody was impressed about this meeting, and I still don't understand why. But what I was really impressed is to visit their warehouse. Huge building, 3-story building, 700 yards long, filled up with Tetrises. If you could imagine your creation in this amount, you won't sleep the next night for sure. That's how I remember Kyoto for myself.
Console versions were never quite as good as the Game Boy version.
I think Game Boy Tetris for me was like the game that I played the most. I think it was such a game changer, right? Because we're already playing the Famicom, like NES type games at home, but then now you can take that everywhere. I remember like going to Disneyland or going on trips, and we would have the Game Boy, we would link it up and play together.
Game Boy looks for me like a device for Tetris, you know, by default. With the small screen, with the good resolution. Buttons work well, music was excellent. I did play Mario on it, but Tetris is much better on the Game Boy, at least for my opinion.
People think the Game Boy version was probably the perfect game.
And I do remember that once it was a Tetris competition, and some schoolboy came to me to sign the cartridge. I signed, and he is glued into the Game Boy. I was very impressed with this. So for me, Tetris is really literally glued in the Game Boy. So if you remember Game Boy, you can't forget Tetris. Historically, they are together.
The heart level, if you push the certain combination when you're booting up the game, it goes to the heart levels. And the heart levels are way faster than any other level. It's so fast that if your piece drops, you cannot reach the side higher than 4 off the bottom. So that's how fast it's going. So if you want to do a Tetris, you need to make the hole in the middle and hope that the long piece comes.
Oh, shoot.
I saw so many versions on home computers and other devices, so for me as a designer, it wasn't anything really exceptional. But it was a really decent, very good version. Probably that was the best version if to not take in account my own computer version, which was much better for me, of course, you know, because I made it. Yeah.
Tengen was going to make cartridges without paying Nintendo. They had reverse engineered the Nintendo cartridge. The Nintendo cartridge had a patented lockout system, a copyrighted song, which is a piece of code that all of the data would be passed through, and then they had the trademark, the word Nintendo, on the cartridge. Tengen had managed to get through all those three.
Did you reverse engineer the code? Did you do it properly? Because depending on how you figured out to jailbreak the machine, there were ways that if you did it through a black box, you can go off and do it. And if you didn't, you couldn't do it.
Nintendo was in court with them. That was going to take time. By that time, Tengen's first game would have come out already. What was their first game? Tetris.
You're gonna give us a copy, yes? Tengen版 Tetris.
It's like a big boy. It's like a big one. I like a big boy.
But apparently, Tengen, in the creation of their version of Tetris, actually used some of the Nintendo code, which violated the rules of the black box.
So if they could stop Tetris, that would put Tengen back a long time. So I go back to Japan, I call Arakawa, I said, this is and this and this is what's happening. He said, get us the right to Tetris. What happens when Atari Games sues me? We will protect you. Like, okay. So I found myself a month later, I'm back in the Soviet Union. I said, yeah, I'm ready to do a deal for the console rights. And do you need me to bring the president of Nintendo? And they said, yes. And they came on a clandestine mission. Everybody at Nintendo of America thought they were in Japan, but they actually flew to London and from London to Moscow. We went through a week of negotiation. So I ended up getting Nintendo the rights to console worldwide, and then they licensed back to me in Japan. So my in-laws' property stayed intact.
Everybody wanted to do 3D Tetris. And it was a version of 3D Tetris called Blockout. And I really hate it.
Ow! Hank Rogers plays Blockout. First time try to play Black.
I realized that immediately that it's too much pressure for human mind to deal with this strange mainframe kind of shape of the pieces and whatever. It was possible to play for maybe 5-10 minutes, but then you kind of get away.
This is 𝐓𝐴, the main programmer and Docker
Made the first well-dressed prototype.
One of my friends do a very good prototype. I don't even remember what the game was about, but he kind of have a very good design of this well, kind of three walls on the bottom. So I decided that for Tetris it would be very interesting to try.
Make each Tetris screen be a side of a wall and have the pieces fall, and you can go around the side of the wall.
Shape of the field delivered a really strong feeling of 3D, but it doesn't spoil the game with the overloading mind. That was very important. It very interesting kind of phenomena happened with the piece at the bottom on the edge, partially on one and partially on the other. It kind of splits on the bottom.
It was addictive. It was a natural sequel. 𝐓𝐿 won an award at SBA the following year after Tetris.
And Blockout wasn't there. I do remember that one of my first very original game, I called it Crowd. Later it was published under the name of Modeled Casino in Microsoft Entertainment Pack.
These puzzles usually stimulate the mathematical mind, and Mud, this new game, is a good example. Your task is to put them away from the field from this small window. In this order, this will be first, but if you disrespect, the model will lock them out as players.
You have this crowd, and you call them either to left, either to right, either up, either down, but every time the different subsets going on. You model them, and you miss them a lot while you operate with them.
The goal is to get all the objects out of the box. They can only be moved in groups. If you put together spades and clubs, or diamonds and hearts, you can move a group to the right. Selecting all green backgrounds or all orange ones lets you go to the left. To go up, you have to choose between circles or squares. To go down, you have to mix red and black suits. If you say you're confused, now I help you do it.
And now put the circle up. Enough?
But now I want to separate that guy and bring him down. Oops, that's not a good idea, I bet.
It took intense concentration to avoid getting stuck. I could see this game was geometry, logic, and strategy, all rolled into one.
You made it!
Okay, I got it.
You see, this game is rich enough. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
I
your
like
challenge.
it very much, but maybe it's a little bit complicated.
Right now, I understand why you call it muddle, because my mind's kind of a muddle right now.
That was my very first, very original game which I produced.
For me personally, the best kind of pleasure is the pleasure of intellectual activity. So this kind of pleasure I would like to present to my customer, to my players.
A game called Swap and Drop. The fragment of the pieces, which kind of in pair goes down, and you could swap them and shift together. That's how it worked. And we did two different games out of it. Tetris with the heads, those heads going this way, and you need to collect the pile of 5 heads, and they have different property. I like Tetris very well, and hand published it for Nintendo, but for Nintendo it didn't, for Famicom it didn't work very well. Don't remember very big sales on it. Some team did it with the faces. 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬 published this game.
The swap and drop framework was a good framework, so it didn't take us much energy to figure out how to tweak it so that it was right. Pieces would come down, and you have to make sure a face is stacked in the right order. So you have the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and the hat or the hair.
And if you don't do the face and have kind of 4 eyes, for example, that's a failure.
You get bonus points if you complete the face that is the intended face versus a random face, different slices of different people's faces. Very simple concept. Also move progressively faster and faster. We knew that players were trying to optimize to get the perfect face. That ultimately worked against you. Because if you were getting the perfect face, you were creating new problems over here on the other sides of the stack. And that's part of the kind of the game mechanic for that particular game.
I didn't like it very well, this faces idea. It didn't fit my feeling that we could play with human faces this way. But they were very fascinated to put Gorbachev with Thatcher eyes and Gorbachev kind of bald stuff and whatever. It wasn't very successful, but Probably broke even.
When a new platform comes out, or when the old games, everybody has it already, what do you do for an encore?
Here we are playing one proposal for a Tetris 2, and it's quite different from anything that I've played. The fact that I can't stop playing is a good sign.
I remember talking to Alexi about this a lot. What does Tetris 2 look like? From the very first night that we were together, we talked about, like, what do we do about Tetris 2? And yeah, I thought about this. We made a policy that we were always going to include Tetris. For each subsequent version, it would be Tetris with something. That's why the second one was Tetris 2 plus Bombless. Tetris Battle Gaiden was like with magic effects and so on and so forth. It's cute. We worked hard to think about all these magical effects you could do to affect the other guy's play field and so on. And I think that's a pretty good version of Tetris. It was a fun game. Bombless, it's funny. So the guy's name is Ishihara, and he's the guy who went out to make Pokemon. That's the guy. On my second trip to Moscow with Arakawa and Lincoln, who do we meet in the lunchroom of the hotel? But it's Ishihara. What the hell is he doing here? He was there for Fishing for Rights because he had created Bombless. If I hadn't been back, he could have gotten the Tetris rights instead of me. So I dodged that bullet. He must have gone to Yamauchi. Well, Nintendo said this game is too close to Tetris. So, you're going to have to talk to 𝐏𝐒 and publish it through 𝐏𝐒. And that's what he ended up doing. We analyzed the game. The game was definitely a Tetris knockoff. According to the law, I could have just published Bombless without paying him anything. But actually, I paid him, like, I don't know, $1 a unit or something like that. And, it's the right thing to do.
The beautiful windward side of Hawaii. Isn't this lovely?
Hank and I and Alexi would get together in Hawaii, and we would hang out at Hank's house.
Need the blue one.
Get that blue one. Get the blue guy.
We were like brainstorming different designs, and so we were trying to figure out how to go back to the original Tetris and make it super. The first concept was, rather than start with a clear will, we start with a messy will. The goal of the game would be to clear out the messy part, and that would get you to the next level of progression. And so we came up with this idea of having bombs. So you have pieces and bombs. Bombs was a digger, pieces were builders, same scoring mechanisms of making up lines. That became Super Tetris. Alexi and myself worked really hard to try to get that game tuned. That game did pretty well.
The perestroika economical situation become worse and worse, so I need to think about the money more and more. Because at some point I signed the paper which says that I grant the rights for Tetris to my computer center for 10 years.
1985 to 1995, 𝐓𝐿 was going to be the agent for the computer center for 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢. Those documents all said that all the rights revert to Alexi at the end of 1995.
Well, Nintendo made money, and we made some money, and Hank made some money, right? None of the money actually got to Alexi.
In 93 is when he asked me to help him because he said, come 1995, they're just going to try to take the game from me. So let's make a deal. And we shook hands on a deal. And my lawyer said, oh, Alexi needs a lawyer. And then I said, Alexi, you need a lawyer. And he says, I don't need a lawyer. He said, if I get a lawyer, your lawyer will fight with my lawyer, your lawyer will win, and I'll be in a worse position than I am now. I'm just going to trust you. You take care of it. That deal is still alive today. So,
at the end of the day, Hank never abandoned Alexi.
We've never had a dispute between me and Alexi. Starting with a handshake in 1993. Oh my gosh, that's 30 years.
He made sure he ultimately got his payday.
I gotta say, you know what? The smartest thing you ever did is he entered Tetris into a computer game contest, and he got second prize, second best game. But the point is that it had the copyright Alexei Pajitnov. So then he established copyright publicly at that event.
Yeah.
Smart guy. In Japan, all of a sudden, there was a fad that came out. You could buy this little 8x12 Tetris machine, and it was called Tetorin. It was it was a little tiny Tetris game. And so we went to bat, and we chased the company down and said, no, you can't be doing this. This is a Tetris knockoff. We went to court and stopped them from publishing the game. And rather than have those just start to go black market, what we did is we went upstream and we said, we'll buy your production. And we upgraded the design, and we sold them in Japan, and Square sold them in the US. By the way, the next keychain game that came after that was Tamagotchi. So we started the keychain game boom in Japan with Tetris, and then Tamagotchi came, which was a huge hit. When finally we took control of Tetris in 1995, and we formed the Tetris company, the first thing we did is we standardized Tetris across all platforms. We say to every licensee, says, look, your game has to be better than any other game that's come before, and yet has to contain Tetris. And so as a result, Tetris improves over time. I mean, we treated Tetris like Disney treats Mickey Mouse, you know? So the colors had to be exact, the rotation had to be exact, the timing had to be exact, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look at the old Tetris, Tetris on Game Boy, Tetris on Sega, they were completely different. On the Game Boy, when a piece drops, you can rotate it as it's falling. And that's visual rotation. It actually looks like it's rotating on a spot. If you land the T-piece on its back, then it's stuck. There's no way you can rotate it anymore. On the Sega, if you rotate that T-piece as it's falling, it looks like it's jumping around in a little circle. It's not rotating on a spot. You can drop it, and then you can still rotate it once it's landed. It actually has to jump up to be able to rotate. On the Game Boy, you do all your thinking while the piece is falling, and on the Sega, you drop it and then you do your thinking. It's just a different way to play the same game. So I came up with a rotation system we call it super rotation. And the way super rotation works is while it's falling, we do visual rotation, which is the Game Boy rotation. Then once the piece has landed and this doesn't work anymore, then it'll try this. And so what we did was we created a rotation system that could accept both players from both systems, because before that they couldn't cross over. They were just too different.
And over time, there's something like called a T-spin, where you can do the same thing with the T-piece, and like if you put the T-piece in the right space and clear lines, then it has the same score as the Tetris, the 4 line clears.
And we also had to create the bag system.
So you're not going to get stuck with like 7 Z pieces. That could happen, and then you're really messed up.
In the original Tetris, the pieces are completely random. I remember checking into a hotel. I said, "Oh yeah, you have something to do with Tetris?" Yeah. You know, it's watching me, and it doesn't give me the eyepiece when I need it. And I said, "It's completely random." I said, "No, it's not. It's not. It's definitely it's watching me." I said, "Sorry, I know exactly what it's doing. It's random." If you're waiting for the eyepiece, sometimes it doesn't come. The way the bag system works is that you have 7 tetraminos, you put them in a bag, you shuffle them, and then you pay them out. Then you put them back in the bag, shuffle them again. So then if you have an eyepiece come out, the worst situation is that it can be at the beginning of the first bag and at the end of the second bag. So that means, 13 pieces later, you're guaranteed to get an eyepiece.
So then you can start strategizing on how you play the game versus everything is up to luck.
It makes it more predictable. And so you could say that Tetris lost something, but because of the variants, we had to do it. In Tetris Worlds, we created 6 different versions of Tetris. 5 different ones. There's Tetris and then 5 variants. There were a whole bunch of things that we tried.
We're here with Mark, with 𝐓𝐞𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐬, looking at some of the Tetris Worlds games to see what can be done about improving them. Lexi has an opinion about everything.
Some of them needed special rotation. One where if you clear a line, the pieces above fall down, and so you can get a cascade going. One of them, you made squares, 4x4 squares. You get extra points if you cleared a line that had part of a square in it. In order to do that, we needed to have a hold piece, because there's no way you can actually get enough pieces of. You would have to wait 2 cycles for that piece to come back. The bag system, it kind of stuck in there. I'm kind of like, now we're having second thoughts because we're back to original Tetris. Why need the bag system? You could do a bigger bag, maybe a double bag, in which case you could have an or just no bag. 2002, I started my mobile phone game company called Blue Lava Wireless. And the reason I started it was because we were trying to license Tetris to a US company, and the biggest upfront guarantee we got from anybody was for $25,000. It's like, dudes, you guys have no idea what's going to happen in this country. It's before camera phones. Camera phone means that you have a screen and you have a CPU that's strong enough to actually move graphics, which means you can make a computer game. Before that, it was all text. I decided, I'll do it myself. So I licensed Tetris, started a company, Blue Lava Wireless. The first phone company with games was Sprint. It was going to be Sprint. They were going to come out in June. And it's something like April. And I send my my sales guy, John Ray, to Sprint. I said, don't bother coming back until you get a deal, which was the same thing that I did. And sure enough, it took him something like 10 days. And of course, we had the #1 game. And then I sold my company to with the worldwide rights to Tetris for mobile phones to jam that for 15 years. And the reason I picked 15 years is nobody has a spreadsheet that goes past 10 years. So 15 years, nobody cares what happens then. It's got to be 1999 when things started to fall apart. 𝐓𝐞𝐿 and I were not agreeing to any deals. I would have a vote, 𝐓𝐿 would have a vote. And if it's a yes, yes, then the license goes through. If it's a yes, no, or a no, no, the license doesn't go through. My advisor says, buy him out. I said, buy him out? What are you talking about? He doesn't have any rights. And it says, read my lips, buy him out. Mobile phone game Tetris is going to come to a halt. And who knows what's going to happen to the industry while you decide to fight up because you're right. I asked Mr. 𝐓𝐿, so how much do you want? And he gave me a number, and I got that money and bought him out. Everything ended in 2005.
I see, yeah.
That's when that's when I bought out 𝐓𝐿.
Yeah.
That's when I bought 𝐓𝐿. Yeah, we should revive 𝐓𝐿.
We should claim the building, yes. It's a nice building, not far from my place in Moscow, by the way.
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
No, they don't owe it. The first thing they cash it out is the building, I'm pretty sure.
I see. Yeah, otherwise it would have been more money.
Exactly.
I grew up around video games in Japan, and my parents were in video games, and that really affected me, right, as a child.
When she was 15, I asked her, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I don't know, but I want to make more money than you. I said, okay, deal. I'll take care of you now, and when I get old, you make more money than me, then you take care of me. I'll go and play golf.
Right after college, I went to work for a big company because my mom wanted me to go work for a big company. It's what we do, Japanese people. So I went to work at American Honda. So there I was working on physical cars. And then my dad would come into town for different video game events.
I knew Ken Kutaragi at the time, and I introduced him at Sony party at E3. You know, they had the big Sony parties. And
I met a producer there, and basically kind of got poached to go work for him. The first game I worked on was Gran Turismo 4. And so I went from working on physical cars to working on virtual cars. And I just remember the first day coming into Sony PlayStation and sitting at my desk, I just felt like, wow, this is where I need to be. And so I worked at PlayStation for a few years, and I went back to get my MBA.
She went and got her master's, which I never did.
My dad, at 52, he had a heart attack. He had a major heart attack and almost died. And I wanted to work with him. I wanted to learn from him.
I worked for my father, and I hated it. He never did any accounting. He never paid any taxes. He never listened to me. I wanted to do things properly. I wanted to create a system for it. He wouldn't have it. When he eventually died, nobody knew what was going on. It just, the business evaporated. So I told my kids, I have 4 kids, I don't want you working for me. I don't need you to work for me because I had a bad relationship with my dad working with him. I'm not forbidding it. I'm just not suggesting it. If you end up working for me and we somehow don't get along as a family, you're fired. Because, you know, I can always hire somebody with your talents, but I can't get another family member. You know, that's a limited resource. So under those conditions, Maya joined the company anyway.
And so that was probably 15 years ago that I came and joined the family business officially. The business that my parents had was called Bulletproof Software. That was BPS growing up. That's what I remember. And then when they moved the business to the States, it became Blue Planet Software. Especially, the company eventually moved to Hawaii. And now we're called Tetris because essentially that's what we do. The reason why we're based in Hawaii is because we have family roots here. This is where my parents met when they were in university. And this is really home for us.
I moved my family to Hawaii when Maya was 11 years old. I think the cutoff time for you to learn a new language completely is somewhere around 11.
We're also between Asia and the West, and America and Europe, and so we're able to do business both sides of the aisle. The fact that we chose Hawaii was for our family and to showcase that, like, we can live and choose where we want to be. Tetris is unique that it's still privately owned. It was never bought, or it was never sold to a big company. It's been really important for me to try to expand the brand beyond video games, but really make it a lifestyle brand. We might work with Uniqlo or Puma to do merchandising. Tetris, McNuggets, it's funky, right? We really didn't know the culture phenomena that it was gonna have. That's a perfect example of like, I wasn't crazy about it, but like, let's try it out. So anything that touches the brand, we manage. We always consult with Hank and Alexi.
That means that time is up or something like that. Oh no, oh!
They own the game together, so everything that we do that's major to the brand, especially when it comes to like game design and moving things forward, we do get them involved.
She was made to be the boss.
So about the story goes back to 2001. I was in Sega. When I finished making Reds, I wanted to try the concept of the synesthesia experience, but the puzzle game. So soon after I left Sega, I went to Hank for advice. I'm thinking the concept, new game design concept, like Tetris meets Reds. Hank's reaction was, "Oh, that's fantastic idea." So, but that was a licensing issue. He was like, "We should work together in the future." So we decided to make the new game at the launch title for PSP. So that was Luminous. When I founded Enhance in 2014, I met Hank again. What if, like that? What if the new Tetris coming? What kind of Tetris? What kind of future Tetris? Like that. He spoke to me very passionately about the Tetris players' zone states in a Zen feeling. And he said to me, "Gucci, you could do it, couldn't you?" He said. Then I traveled to Hawaii many times with Ishihara, who became the director and art director of the project. And we, two of us, created a game concept together. And much of the inspiration of the Tetris effect came from our stay in the island of Hawaii. When I think about the idea of Tetris effects, my past experience, like I love to watch Tetris in arcade. I love to watch and I love to feel that kind of atmosphere. If the people watching this game around, how can we move them? The player wants to focus the game, watching just blocks, but the people in the gallery, people watching the people can watch temptations like the fish transformed to Mantley. And be well. After that, you can watch Earth in a space. Yeah, that kind of design, first person and third person. Yeah, from the beginning of the project, we tried to find some of the new feature and elements, like to boost the zone feel. Zone mode, that was really tough to create, and we had many tests and experiments, but we couldn't have the big confidence. Oh, this is it, and we decided to extend development 3 months. We promised with 𝐏𝐿𝐴, so 𝐏𝐿𝐴 told me, please make a new Tetris game using and boosting like a zone feel. In our mind, we all the time, how can we make it a Zen feeling? What is Zen? It's like that kind of experience. We dive into the pool and the ocean, like suddenly like a boom. The time stopped and the sound disappeared. So no place, no time. Then how many lines you can make? That was very successful. And finally we could find, oh, this is it. That was an amazing process of the production. So that was a very good thing to make, Tetris, using Tetris and making the new thing. That was a very fantastic project to me.
This movie came about around the same time that we were actually working on the Tetris sci-fi movie. And that movie ended up not happening, but a famous director said, hey, I want to make the Tetris movie, the biopic. From the very beginning, from the script writing stage, we were involved. And there was probably a couple of documentaries in the past that were out, like the BBC one, that kind of showcased like how amazing and interesting the story of Tetris was, right? And so anybody hearing that, like, it made sense. Like, there's this crazy American Dutch guy goes to the Soviet Union on a tourist visa and tries to track down the Ministry of Games to get the rights. The friendship that formed between 𝐏𝐿𝐴 Rogers and Alexei Pajitnov that ultimately brought Tetris to the rest of the world. And now we have a whole new generation of Tetris players that maybe have never played, but their touch point was the movie.
I think our friendship goes deeper than our individual interest.
𝐏𝐿𝐴 and Alexei are so different.
You should help me with the... Yeah. Turn it, come on. Don't you see my piece?
What are you talking about? No, you can't put it there. You
I
can't
can.
reach. Just put it there. Yeah, here you go. Alexei, if you put him next to a music box, he'll be listening to classic music, and I'll be listening to rock.
𝐏𝐿𝐴 is an extrovert.
Tetris tastes much better than Cosmos. Is this Cosmos?
Alexei is not an extrovert.
The movies that he likes and the movies that I like are just different. Everything is kind of like that.
I brought my racquetball racket, and the only problem is that there's no racquetball courts in Moscow.
They're as different as you can get. I can say this because 𝐏𝐿𝐴's my father, right? So I can say some things that some people would never say. 𝐏𝐿𝐴 is crazy. My dad is out there. He is the original, the most interesting man in the world. He'll do things that nobody would do. So that's him, right? He went to the Soviet Union on a tourist visa. Alexei is not crazy.
I don't know about him, but I always want to understand why such a ridiculous thing pleases him.
𝐏𝐿𝐴 loves the attention. Alexei doesn't want the attention. He's very traditional, very Russian in his thinking, and 𝐏𝐿𝐴 is very Western American thinking.
His weak spot is a fish named herring. His Dutch soul just gave up in front of herring plate, He even find out the very far, very shabby German restaurant in San Francisco, kind of.
Come on, it's not shabby.
40-minute drive from the place just because the herring is there. In Russian culture, it's always the cheapest fish cut it in piece on the piece of newspaper, which it used to eat after vodka. So all alcoholics is their main kind of snack, lowest level possible kind of food.
My favorite sushi is also, you know, the cheapest sushi. It's mackerel. It's saba.
Yes.
And so that's
almost herring.
it's like the cheapest.
But they have this common bond, this common language, and they completely have this trust in each other.
But we, you know, like we did the high school boys trip to Europe, the two of us, meaning we got Eurail passes. We just landed in Amsterdam. He likes to plan things and have everything decided, and I like to just adventure. Let's get on the train and see where it takes us. To reduce the stress, he would get one day and then I would get one day, and so we took turns. And on the day that, you know, it was his turn, he would figure out where we're going to stay, get the whole itinerary planned, and we would follow that itinerary. When it was me, let's get on the train. When we get there, we'll figure out where we're going to stay.
Yeah, wonderful trip.
Yeah, it was great, actually.
They're both brilliant, but their personalities are so different, right?
If we're in the same jurisdiction, in the same city, every other day, bottle of wine, dinner, and we have this this tradition. So, is it your turn or my turn?
Probably mine. Yeah, mine.
It's his business card cut in half, and it says ___. On it. He pays for dinner.
Yeah, and give it.
And then gives me the paper, and then I
or
have
not
it,
forget whose turn is
and
it.
then I pay for dinner, and I give him the piece of paper. That's how we keep track of whose turn it is to pay for dinner.
Yeah.
Kimchi, no.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault.
Time up.
Time up.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Hey, good game.
Absolutely.
I believe that Tetris will be here forever. Alexei really created the perfect game.
Maybe dozen, maybe 14 different reasons why it's outstanding game. And it's kind of very rare combination of very small traits which somehow strangely come together in one title. It's like a miracle.
Now we have VR and AR, and we don't want to really get stuck in the past.
We don't know the future, but if I have a chance, you know, I want to create the new experience using Tetris, using new technology, new devices.
We're trying to take more risks, you know? Tetris is I had to take a deep breath because it means so much to me. It's not just a game for me, you know, it's family, it's our culture. Tetris to me is joy.
I think we're only now getting around to figuring out why it is that Tetris is so, how can I say, soothing, if you will. I think it's a way to calm your mind down before you start your day and then after you're done with your day. So I think what Tetris can do and what Tetris does is it takes you into a zone. Your conscious mind is absorbed in Tetris and your subconscious mind is free to wander. And that's a relaxed state. It's sort of like electronic meditation, if you will. And Tetris is the perfect game for that.
Previous research by Oxford Psychological Lab shows that Tetris is very useful to get rid of flashback in PTSD situations. So it's really helpful. So we have really good hopes on it.
You know, there's a lot of trauma in the world. If we can make a dent in this trauma, then maybe we can make the world a better place.
I still consider Tetris as a pure entertainment. One of the best electronic game which provide you happiness from the screen.
We just recently had a game player beat Tetris.
Oh my god! Oh.
We never thought that would be possible, but that's Tetris.
Some games has a really long life. Look at chess, it's about 1,000-year-old game.
Tetris is the one game that's still going to be around when all the other games are gone.
If we can keep providing Tetris and keep providing joy, then I will feel like I've accomplished something.
That's the realization of my dream. Enjoy, play Tetris. And be ready for Tetris very soon. Hurrah! Be ready. Boom! We got it.